这个是连录的，直播一定要连响是。你要我这台我录。是，因为你这个是设定地方。对。啊，不会，我先走，谢谢。
喂，一二三，喂，一二三。
请问一下，所以有网址吗？
有，我给那个客人。
哦，好好好。
各位来宾，我们的开幕仪式即将开始，那还请各位先请入座就座，谢谢。各位长官、贵宾以及媒体朋友们早安，欢迎莅临2016艺术银行国际趋势论坛。Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 2016 Artbank International Trade Forum. 今年我们非常荣幸能够邀请到国内外的专家学者来跟我们分享他们在国际间经营艺术银行的管理策略以及实务经验，共同来探讨艺术逐渐流通在文化外交上的注意。那这2天的议程精彩可期，也期待每位参与的观众都能有收获满满。Today, we are honored to have invited international and local speakers to share their experience about Artbank management, strategy, and practice, and benefits of art leasing to cultural diplomacy. We hope everyone here would enjoy these 2 days. 在今天活动开始前，我们先邀请现场的来宾与我们一同欣赏台湾艺术银行所制作的影片。In the very beginning, we would like to present an video of Taiwan Artbank.
艺术银行的运作跟推广模式在台湾不是最早启用的，在加拿大跟澳洲都有艺术银行的一个运作的一个案例。那以目前台湾的，就是我们自己经营的艺术银行来讲的话，它的出租率已经超过50%。其实，在短短的2、3年间，跟加拿大跟澳洲的银行，其实它的运作已经达到一个相同的一个水平。那我想这是一个值得期待的一个计划。
它最大的意义应该是我们扶持了或者是支持了许多具有潜力跟优秀的艺术家，让他的作品在不同的公共空间能被看见。所以已经大概有累积2年以上的经验了。但我们目前是很灵活的采用各种不同形式的推广跟行销活动，包括主题展览啊、贵宾之夜啊、演讲讲座啊等等的不同的形式，还有各式各样的参访的接待，还有微型工作坊等等的，也累积来说，在这2年中间也累积了超过100次以上，超过150次不同场次的推广行销活动。
在展示中间，他可能临时有一些什么样的小状况，例如说有人不小心碰到他，或者是说他临时有一些脏污或者什么，我们会需要做紧急的处理。那这边都会做一个判断跟紧急处理之后，我们要怎么样去做后续的维护，或者是说我们甚至要请一些专业的修复师一起来讨论如何进行修复。
对我们来说，就是我们的展览很不一样的地方是，我们的展览其实它是很主动的去介入一般你不会进美术馆的民众的生活空间。就是艺术银行策展的这个工作范围呢，它其实有很大的一块是跟客户之间的一个讨论，就是等于说是我们是客户的一个艺术相关的咨询，然后他们可能有相关的问题，或是对他的空间就是有相关的就是展览的要求，然后他们可能都会跟我们说，然后我们就是依照就是可能他们的空间的风格啊，或者是他们所希望的就是主题，然后来找合适的艺术家，然后来让艺术家的作品在这个空间中就是有最好的展出的一个环境跟美感的效果这样子。
这幅画跟我们打造的空间，我觉得那是一种就是加重的冲击感。
可是我有遇到有客人，然后他就会过来说，这是林玉婷的作品，我就觉得 还蛮妙的哦，所以知名度还是有的。
就我们这家店本来就是一个怎么讲，字很多的店，但它来有画，就是有艺术作品走进这个空间，其实蛮好的。
艺术银行他们在策划就是当店家跟艺术品结合这个活动的时候，其实你会知道，就是艺术它可以存在生活之中，
会常常很容易就跟艺术脱离了。因为你如果不去看展览或者是什么，有时候其实会觉得艺术其实就在身边。可是借由这次经验，其实就是觉得说，好像又回来了。
可以让我们它在整个艺术产业里面的运作可以更好，就是帮助到艺术家，还有整个艺术产业链。他可以扮演一个重要的角色。我们是年轻艺术家，好了，就是新秀艺术家来看，我觉得它有一个推动的意义，就是说，可能因为我们艺术家刚开始没有一些作品要有人去欣赏，或者是要有人去收购它。或许官方做的这个艺术银行，它有一个意义是可以推动这个艺术作品的一个流动。那他把它收购，艺术家可能在生活上可以比较好一点。那另外一方面，我们的作品也可以透过官方被看到，透过艺术银行让这个艺术的影像跟影像有关的艺术品能深入生活里面，不是只有平常眼睛接触到，还有让它真正成为空间展示的一部分。我觉得艺术银行在这个部分是对我们是起了一个那个领头的作用。
我好像是艺术银行第一届开始就有作品被收藏，那很幸运的就是刚好也有建商在艺术银行的他可能相关的收藏展里面又看到我的作品，然后呢对我的作品有兴趣，然后转而由艺术银行就是介绍，然后直接来跟我联络，然后有进一步的其他可能性的合作。
帮艺术家推广、帮艺术家包装是画廊的一个最大的一个目标。当然这部分和艺术银行有一部分是所谓功能性是重叠的。功能性重叠，我认为是好事啊，就是说大家都在推这个艺术家，让艺术家他的所谓的作品越多人知道越好，越多人去了解越好。对我们画廊来讲，当然是会比较乐于见到这样子的一个发展。所以当然我们很支持那个艺术银行继续收藏影像作品了，尤其我觉得对比较弱势的，在收藏圈里面比较被忽略的，或是亟待被开发的艺术品的脉络，比如录像啊。影像啊、装置啊，像这样的东西，尤其艺术银行来做，可能也会让这个艺术的这个食物链嘛，整个能串联的更为紧密。
那它怎么样能够更有计划性的？这笔经费除了在做收藏以外，它更有计划性的可能去做一个什么样的对外的推广，而不是在国内的推广。我觉得这可能会是很多艺术家会更期待的一个部分。
台湾的艺术银行发展迈入第3年。那今年很高兴能够举办国际性的论坛，邀请到来自澳洲、英国、美国、加拿大等地的专业人士来台湾交流。那现在就向在座各位介绍今日莅临的贵宾。Taiwan Artbank is growing to 30 years. We are grateful to host an international forum and have invited specialists from Australia, UK, US, and Canada to gathering together in Taiwan. Hereby, I'd like to introduce you, our guest today. 首先是文化部洪孟启部长 ，Let's welcome Minister of Culture, Mr. 洪孟启。国立台湾美术馆萧宗煌馆长 ，National Taiwan Museum of Fine Art Director 萧宗煌。 加拿大艺术委员会传播和公众参与处处长 Tammy Scott 女士 ，Director General of Communication and Public Engagement in Canada Council for the Arts Miss Tammy Scott， 澳洲艺术银行执行长 Tony Stephens 先生 ，Artbank Australia Director of Tony Stephens。美国国务院艺术大使馆资深策展人 Sarah Changi 女士 ，Senior Curator of the U.S. State Department Miss Sarah Changi， 英国国家典藏档案室主任 Roger Golding 先生 ，Curator of Documentation of the GAC Mr. Roger Golding from UK， 前艺术银行主持人张振林博士 ，as Curator of Taiwan Artbank Mr. 张振林。台北市政府文化局谢佩妮局长 ，Commissioner of the Department of Cultural Affairs of the Taipei City Government Miss 谢佩妮，国立台湾艺术大学艺术管理与文化政策研究所赖英英教授 ，Professor 赖英英 from the National Taiwan University of Arts。感谢你们的莅临 ，Thank you all for joining this forum。接下来我们有请文化部部长致辞。We would like to invite Minister of Culture, Mr. Hong Mengqi, to give us the opening remark. 掌声欢迎洪部长。Well, please welcome Minister Hong.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Ministry of Culture, I would like to present my sincere welcome to our distinguished guest from Canada, Australia, United States, and Great Britain. And to join this forum, it recalled me that in 1930s, the Roosevelt government, they donated the artists and asked for nothing, but to create their work in local and to let the people to understand what his artwork, and as a result, and they promote the artist's social position, and they led the people of the state to know what is modern art, and also it raised the modern art of the state be one of the leader in the art community. And the concept of Artbank is inspired by this experience. And also, we copied experience from Canada and Australia. The goal first, we want to support our artists, and then we want to promote our artists, and let the people of Taiwan understand what the modern art, what the new generation, what they think, what they create, what they work, and another thing. We want to encourage our government, the collectors, may keep their eyes on the modern art of right now in Taiwan, and to inspire our artists more and more to show their energy and dynamic. And also, as art is a common language in the world. So we want to make a platform to show to introduce our artists to communicate with international community. So also, we learn some experience. We want to learn some experience from Great Britain and from the United States. And I have to take some notes because I don't want to forget your name. So I'm so happy to inviting to invite our distinguished guest from Canada, Tammy Scott, from Australia, Tony Stephen, and from the state, Charlotte Tanguy, and Great Britain, Roger Golding. We hope we may share your valuable experience, and we hope in those 2 days we may learn a lot from your experience, and may inspire may go further to develop our art bank. Right now, with art bank, it is still young, so we hope we may cooperate together, and may cooperate with our artists, our scholars in Taiwan here, to let our people also to raise their ability of appreciation of modern art. And thank you again. Thank you for joining with us. And may you have a wonderful day in Taipei, in Taiwan. And God bless you. Thank you.
And now we would like to invite Director of National Taiwan Museum of Fine Art to give us make a toast. 那有请国美馆馆长为我们说几句话。有请肖馆长。
部长、各位贵宾、各位今天早上的参与的朋友，大家早安，大家好。我讲一个小小的故事，就是事实上，台湾在20年前也曾经规划办理艺术银行。那时候在文建会的时候，我们有一个任务编组，叫做艺术品流通中心。那时候的文建会的主委郭维环派了国美馆的前馆长到加拿大去考察，然后希望把艺术银行这样的一个经验带回到台湾来。可是那个时候的整个社会的环境其实还不成熟，所以那时候我们做了几件事情，就是说，他不是去架构艺术家的作品，因为那时候政府的会计制度的话，文化部不能去买作品，好，所以那时候是请艺术家创作，所以我们做了几个地方，譬如说像荣民总医院，帮了总统府，帮了机场，然后去做艺术银行这样的一个规划。那另外的话，也有一批作品送到纽约代表处，就是纽约文化中心。但是那时候基本上来讲是一个公共服务性质，因为文建会那时候公部门不能买作品，也不能收租金，所以那个计划的话，最后就变成是一个纯粹的公共服务，然后就无疾而终。那当然我们很高兴，就是在2013年，就是文化部成立之后，2013年开始执行艺术银行的计划。那在这个时间点，刚好整个台湾的社会环境都已经成熟了。那当初在艺术银行执行的时候，有设定，就是3到5年来做一个政策性的整体检讨。所以我们等于是2013年到目前为止，总共有663个艺术家，1289件作品。那我们的出租率的话，基本上来讲的话，刚刚资料上已经超过50%。那另外的话，就是立法委员他们最质疑的，就是说艺术银行其实都在服务公部门，民间的租赁的件数太少。事实上，我们从2014年开始，公家部门跟私部门的租赁的件数已经等于到一个 balance 50%。那以目前 right now 这个时候，私部门的租赁率已经到达63%，超过公部门的租赁率。所以基本上来讲的话，它的运作情况是良好的。那我们今天当然希望说，这样的一个政策，如果确实是在阶段性可以达到一个帮助艺术家，然后 帮助整个公部门的一个公共空间，甚至到民间企业、民间部门、医院、企业大楼，包括餐厅，这样的一个把美术、把艺术家的作品带入一个公共空间的一个计划，确实有它的成效的话，那我们面临的就是怎么样让它永续经营。那当然，加拿大、澳洲，甚至英国、美国，他们的经验都希望说给我们一些启发，让我们把这个计划在文化部的支持之下，然后继续推动下去。那今天非常高兴部长亲自到场勉励，那也非常感谢这么多的朋友来聆听。那最重要，我们也要谢谢在座的几位主讲人跟主持人，然后让我们这个活动可以办得这么顺利。谢谢各位，祝各位身体健康，我们活动圆满顺利，谢谢。
Thank you, Director. 馆长，请稍坐。那现在我们想邀请部长以及馆长及本次论坛的讲师及主持人们一同上台合影。Now we are honored to invite all the speakers come to the stage to take a group photo together. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the great photos. And please take your seat. 谢谢各位贵宾为我们这个论坛开启了一个序幕。那么，馆长有请。那么我们今天的开幕仪式就在这里告一个段落了。那我们即将直接进行到我们论坛的活动。那如果有需要翻译的来宾，那请带上您的语音翻译机。那也提醒您不好意思，那个语音翻译机的话，频道0是中文，频道2是英文。那另外提醒您说，论坛活动期间是禁止饮食，也禁止录音录影。谢谢您的配合。Thanks again for everyone's attendance. The 2016 Artbank International Trade Forum is officially started. And please wear your headphone for translation, and please note the audio and video recording is prohibited, and no food and drink during the forum. Thanks for your cooperation. 是的为期2天的2016艺术银行国际趋势论坛将以艺术银行经营管理实务以及艺术作为外交利器2大议题进行探讨。那今天的议题为艺术银行经营管理实务，将分别以3场的演讲进行。第一场是有请到我们加拿大艺术委员会传播和公众参与处处长 Tammy Scott 担任讲师，那以加拿大艺术委员会的艺术银行先驱和再造为题进行分享，并有请台北市政府文化局局长谢佩妮局长主持，请掌声有请 Scott 处长及谢佩妮局长。
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. I always am looking forward to come back to the museum. After all my career began here over 26 years ago. So obviously, I'm much older than you think. Yeah. So I must say that it's really proper for us to open such a forum with the remark and the feedback from the Canada Art Council Artbank project. After all, it's considered as the mother or the forefather of all the art banks. So in this, dated back to 1972, as I believe, as I was told, undauntedly, Canada begins an adventure with lots of ups and downs. But somehow it opened the veil and opened all the possibilities to the whole world with a preposition and the materialization of an art bank. So we all find inspirations and encouragements from what they have been doing over the last 44 years. Today, I'm really glad to have the honor to present Ms. Tammy Scott to do the next keynote speech. Tammy has joined the Art Council just over 6 years, yes, and has been leading the Department of Communications and Public Engagement. So we all know that if we only have beautiful collections like what we all have in our storages, it doesn't help anybody. But we feel we are stuck with lots of beautiful, luxuriant or art pieces. So without the extensional programs and without the endless efforts, all these artworks will be just, being kept in the cold warehouses without showing their values to the whole world. So I would expect Tammy to show us, how hot, all these art pieces have been becoming or have become among all the general publics and among all the learners. And also to learn more about how they begin the project to initiate much more Aborigines art creations to the whole world. So ladies and gentlemen, may I present Tammy Scott, the speaker.
Ni hao. I'm afraid that after 36 hours of travel and with 12 hours of time change, I have to refer to my notes today, otherwise I might get my story a little bit wrong. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here today with all of you and with all of my international colleagues. As you just heard, my name is Tammy Scott, and I'm Director General of Communications and Public Engagement at the Canada Council for the Arts. Among my responsibilities are the care of the Canada Council Art Bank, which is a program under the Canada Council for the Arts. Before I joined the Canada Council 6 years ago, I spent many years in the private sector. Most recently, I was Vice President of Marketing Communications for a Canadian telecommunications provider called TELUS. And before that, I was Vice President of Marketing for MasterCard in New York. Very different sectors than the arts. And one of the things that I'm trying to bring to the Canada Council and to the Art Bank is the notion of measurement of outcomes and really demonstrating accountability to our most important stakeholder group, which we consider to be the Canadian public. I think all of us in the room would agree that the arts are integral to our lives. I'm very happy to say that 3 days before I got on a plane to get here, the Canadian government agreed that the arts are important and recently announced the doubling of the Canada Council budget at a time when a lot of other arts organizations are being cut around the world. And so today I want to speak to you about the Art Bank, but also about why the arts are so important to the Canadian identity and culture. And one of the things that I wanted to do was a little bit of a personal note and show you some of the artwork that's in my office, because one of the privileges that I get working at the Canada Council is to select artwork for my space. This piece on the left here, entitled A Question of Identity, is by a Québécois painter, Denis Turbin, and it was painted in 1992. I selected this one for my office because it speaks a little bit to my own heritage, my mother's side being francophone, originally from France, and my father's side being anglophone, originally from the United Kingdom. But because I think a lot of Canadians are still struggling to define what it means to be Canadian. And for myself, I'm helping the Canada Council define what it means through the artwork in the Artbank collection, as I said earlier. The painting on the right is by an Aboriginal artist by the name of Rita Le Tendre, and it was painted in 1972, which is the year that the Artbank was created, also the year of my birth. So maybe it was fate that I came to join the Canada Council and work with the Artbank program. Rita Le Tendre is an Aboriginal artist. On my mother's side, I have Abenaki descent, which is Aboriginal, and so this piece spoke to me. The one that I don't have here, because it was recently borrowed from my office for the new Minister of Canadian Heritage, is a piece by an artist called Pau, who's from Vietnam. He was a Vietnamese refugee who arrived in Canada in 1979, the same year that my family hosted a family of Vietnamese refugees. So it's a very personal piece for me. It's a silk shirt that he wore when he arrived in Canada, and it's covered in 1,600 pins of the Canadian flag, pins that he received when he wrote a letter to the then local MP and covered the shirt in them. And I like to say that art tells a story, art starts a conversation, and so this explains some of my selections. I think the reason why the Minister of Canadian Heritage selected that piece for her own office is because the whole notion of immigration and refugees is very much a topic of discussion in Canada. We just recently welcomed 25,000 refugees from Syria, so a very hot topic right now. So the Canada Council for the Arts is a federal crown corporation that was founded in 1957 with the mandate of fostering and promoting the study and enjoyment of the arts and the production of works in the arts. It's a little bit unique in that it is funded primarily through parliamentary appropriations as well as through endowments and generous donations. And we have an arm's length relationship with government, which means that there's no interference with the way that we award all of our funding. So we predominantly award our funding to artists and arts organizations through an adjudication process. Juries make the decisions as to which artists and arts organizations receive funding from the Canada Council. Historically, juries were also the way through which we purchased artwork for the Artbank. That's evolved a little bit over time, and I'll speak to that a little bit later in my presentation. The dual mandate of the Canada Council for the Arts is one that is meant to promote artists and arts organizations and fund them, as I mentioned, but it's also about giving all Canadians access to the arts, much like the Artbank does. We also foster the notions of equity and having demonstrated strong value for all Canadians. And that's something that's very challenging because we have in Canada a very diverse nation with over 200 ethnic origins represented in our country. So the Canada Council Artbank is a program under the Canada Council overall, and it's reporting into my division, which is Communications and Public Engagement. Why? Because we see the Artbank is probably the best way to reach out to Canadians and to engage them in the arts in Canada. Over the years, there's been much evolution on the Artbank. Initially in 1972, when the Artbank was created, there wasn't a real market for Canadian art. And so the primary goal of the Art Bank in 1972 and all the way up until 1990 was to acquire work. And I like to sometimes reference this as purchase for purchase sake. While the decisions were made by juries, there was no desired end state of getting the artwork seen by publics or renting it. That came much, much later. And you'll see a slide later on how that became a challenge for us over time, because we do run out of warehouse space, especially after over 40 years. In the 1990s, by then, the market in Canada was fairly established, and the government of the day decided that there really wasn't the need to have an art acquisition program in Canada. And unfortunately, the government announced that they would cease its funding of the Art Bank, and they, in fact, recommended that the Art Bank be shut down. The Canada Council for the Arts, of course, felt that this was a really missed opportunity and that the Art Bank could be reinvented and serve a new purpose. So it was in the 1990s that we changed our business model to one of cost recovery and started renting back in the day primarily to government organizations in a way of recuperating all of our costs, including all of our warehouse costs, our staff fees, and of course the acquisition of new artwork. What's happening now is we're evolving yet again, reinventing ourselves yet again, and seeing that while art rental continues to be a critical way in which we reach publics, we also think that there's an opportunity for outreach and public engagement, and in fact are looking to change our business model so that that portion of our activities would go back to being funded from our parliamentary appropriation and not necessarily from the art rental revenues. And I'll show you a little bit later in the presentation some examples of some recent initiatives that we're very proud of that get art in spaces where obviously one would not expect to see it. So one of the things that I have in my core from my background in the private sector is the importance of branding. And when I joined the Canada Council 6 years ago, I tried to help define or articulate what the Canada Council brand and the Art Bank brand should stand for. And I came up, after doing many workshops with staff and with key audiences, with what we call our brand personality attributes. So essentially, we think that the Canada Council and its Art Bank program should aspire to be open, vibrant, and connected. By open, we're speaking to being accessible to all Canadians and to people around the world. By vibrant, we're speaking to the diversity of the art scene in Canada, the diversity of the people of Canada. And connected is all about engaging with publics, being impactful, and above all, being relevant. As I'm sure you can imagine, giving access to Canadians to the Canada Council Art Bank in a country that's so large and so diverse poses its own set of challenges. This is not to scale, I should add, but essentially we have 35 million people spread out over 10 million square kilometers. If we compare that with Taiwan at 23 million people spread out over 36,000 square kilometers, you can imagine that with one tiny little warehouse in Ottawa, Ontario, over here, it's very difficult to reach all Canadians. Does anyone know how long it takes to fly from Ottawa to Vancouver? Would anyone like to take a guess? 6 hours to fly from Ottawa to Vancouver. If you were to fly to the northern parts of Canada, it could take you 3 weeks. And I say that because the weather patterns are so unpredictable that it's not uncommon when we do artwork purchases in Nunavut or in other remote northern communities for us to have to stay for several weeks until the weather clears up and we're able to come back. So how do we connect with publics across such a vast nation? Well, we do so in a number of ways that I'll get to. But first, if we are now open, vibrant, and connected, that certainly wasn't the case in the 1990s. This is an invitation to a private event that occurred at the Art Bank in the 90s, and it really depicts the notion of the Art Bank being a sealed vault, one that only the select few privileged can have access to. At the time, our art rental activities were predominantly to government, and within government, it was seen as something that you rent to put on your wall in your office. That's changed quite a bit over time, and I think, thank goodness that it's changed so much, because really when you think about it, the collection belongs to all of the people of Canada, and therefore they all should have access to it. One of the biggest ways in which we're able to connect with Canadians coast to coast to coast is through the digitization of our collection, which is something fairly new. I'll hopefully have enough time to give you a very short demo of our new Artbank website, artbank.ca. But we have now all 17,000 pieces of the Artbank collection accessible to all Canadians, and really to anyone around the world who has any interest in Canadian contemporary art. So access, sharing, promoting the collection, these are all very important aspects of public engagement for the Artbank. Coming from the private sector, I think it's also important to demonstrate your success. So a few years ago, we launched the Artbank dashboard. What this is just a one-page document that we update on a quarterly basis, and it helps us capture our revenue targets and achievements broken down by public and private sector. Recent years have we've shifted our focus from art rental purely to government to the private sector as well, and have had huge success in specific markets, which I'll get to a little bit later. But the other thing that the Artbank dashboard does is it demonstrates our outreach and public engagement activities. So we measure, among other things, how many pieces in the collection are currently on loan, on exhibit. We also measure, recently with the addition of artbank.ca, the traffic that we get to our website, the online engagement that we get through our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all sorts of social media platforms. We're trying to link the financial responsibilities and public engagement as best we can and demonstrate impact on both levels. We've also been rethinking the art rental component and viewing it not just as an opportunity to generate revenues and hopefully acquire more artwork, but as a way of connecting with the public as well. So essentially, if I think of the new vision for the Artbank, it's one that blends together collection management. Like anyone who operates any art bank, that's a huge part of your focus. With our outreach opportunities, both in physical channels as well as in digital channels, and art rental. We see the Artbank's work in these three areas: renting the collection to the public and private sector clients, outreach, using the collection to connect with Canadians through exhibitions, physical, online loans, and museums and galleries, and managing the collection through strategic acquisitions and deaccessions to ensure the collection is relevant to its mandate and to its stakeholders. Public engagement and the art rental program, as I said, we see the two as being not so much mutually exclusive. The art rental program allows people to see artwork in unexpected places. In fact, that was part of the video that we saw about the Taiwan Art Bank. So very similar thinking that perhaps we're reaching out to people who aren't spending as much time in museums and galleries and engaging them with the arts in a way that they maybe wouldn't have an opportunity to do so. So now when we go out and we do business development and we try to get new clients, we speak to them less about decorating their private office and speak to them more about engaging with their own publics, if they're private sector organizations with their own client base. And we see, I spoke to our brand personality attributes, open, vibrant, and connected. We try to figure out in the private sector in particular, what are those things that that organization stands for, and how can our recommendations on artwork selection speak to their own brand values and embody the things that are important to them and to their clients. So more than ever, we're seeing that our clients are actually resonating with this, and they want to find artwork that is dynamic, that's relevant, that's politically and socially aware. And in fact, increasingly we're seeing a lot of risk-taking in the artwork that's selected, and that is reflected also in our recent acquisitions. And I'll show you some examples of some recent acquisitions that we've made. We've had a lot of peaks and valleys in our art rental program over the last few decades, depending on the government du jour's appetite for artwork. Our current government is very arts friendly, but that is not always the case. And that's why, as I said, we've really tried to round out our art rental program with public and private sector rentals. And if you look at the dashboard that I showed earlier, it actually shows in the private sector what are the vertical markets where we have art rentals. And what we see is that it's predominantly law firms, accounting firms, public relations agencies, advertising agencies that we find we have great success with art rental. One of the things that we do that's of huge importance to our private sector clients is explain how the selection of artwork can make a happier, healthier work environment for their employees. And we know that in Canada, millennials are taking over the workplace, and millennials are very interested in working in environments where they feel inspired and they feel engaged. And so the artwork certainly helps achieve this. In our own office at the Canada Council, as I said, we select artwork that speaks to our brand personality attributes of open, vibrant, and connected. And when we speak to vibrant in particular, we're referring to notions of diversity as a nation. And our Artbank collection, if I could invite all of you to come and do a tour in our warehouse, you'd see that it's a hugely diverse collection, and I encourage you to visit it online. Because of the diversity, this has actually changed our acquisition, and a lot of the works that have been purchased in recent years really reflect the diversity of the nation, but in particular of Indigenous artists. I'm going to show you just 3 artworks that we are just in the midst of purchasing as we speak. This first one, entitled Headdress, speaks to something that's going on in Canada right now, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was inspired by the South African model and really looks at the colonial history in Canada and the treatment of the early settlers of Canada's Indigenous people. And I'd like to say that it's a history that we feel proud of, but we certainly don't, and are now starting to come to terms with everything that's been done over the years. The Truth and Reconciliation Initiative in Canada, much like its South African counterpart, seeks to identify and really document the things that happen through history. And I think that acquisitions for the Artbank need to reflect this important time where we're trying to make peace with Canada's Indigenous population. So this piece, Headdress, uses traditional beading and new technologies in photography to explore the stereotypes and identity in Indigenous peoples. The next piece does this in an even more powerful way. Jordan Bennett's work on Why Are Native Americans, a painting from 2012, really explores some of the stereotypes that exist about Canada's Indigenous people. When we see this type of work a few years ago, I don't think I would have been so bold as to acquire this type of work because it might have been challenging to find clients who are willing to rent it, but we're seeing a real shift in Canada where this is exactly the kind of story that people are looking to tell. Again, because if we don't acknowledge what we've done historically and what that's meant to this whole group of people, then we can't move forward into the future. And here's another piece, again, very powerful, Barry Ace's For King and Country. Really interesting that many Indigenous Canadians volunteered to go to both world wars, but fought overseas at a time when they were not even legally allowed to vote in Canada. So another very powerful piece, and one that it's in the warehouse being mounted as we speak, and we have a list of clients who are interested in renting it. So it just goes to show the major transformation going on in Canada and the appetite to explore works that are really making people stop and think. If I were to give one piece of advice to anyone starting an Artbank today, I would say give yourself an out clause. Our warehouse is 3,251 square meters in size, so a pretty decent size. That's 35,000 square feet for those of you who prefer in feet. And yet we're already running out of space. So it's kind of hard to imagine, but I keep thinking if after almost 44 years we've run out of space and were to, fast forward to another 40 years from now, would we need double the warehouse space? It's not very feasible because, in fact, our building rental fees are the second most expensive line item in the Artbank's expenses after staff salaries. So in the beginning of the Artbank, we purchased pieces such as this one, which take up an awful lot of space. And this has actually never been on loan and never been rented. So it's sitting in our warehouse. And while it was a meaningful piece at the time that it was acquired, it's not helping us reach our public engagement objectives, and it's certainly not helping us drive revenues. And so we're looking to building a de-accession policy to help us remove pieces from the collection that are not tied to the core mandate that we have today. If we were to go back and do it over again, we would have built that into the purchases. It's a challenge from a legal perspective. It's a challenge from an accounting perspective. Because it affects our balance sheet if we are to de-accession artworks. And so we're exploring all of this right now and trying to make space for new acquisitions. The new ones that I just referred to earlier, it's actually part of the contracts that we sign with those artists that should we choose to not keep their artwork in the collection, that they get first right of refusal on either repurchasing the work at today's market value, or they have a say in where we might sell it or put it out on loan or donate it, in fact. So I guess really what I'm getting at is that our motto increasingly is to get the artwork out of the warehouse and into the world. And we're doing this through outreach, through art rental, through loans and exhibits. And the accession policy, which if I'm ever invited back, hopefully will be completed and I can speak to that in greater detail. But one of the things that we're trying to do as we work on our de-accession policy is to create a donation program as well as long-term loans. Just going to move these sheets before they fall down. So these images here are pieces of art that are all from Ottawa-based artists, Ottawa, Canada, our nation's capital. We selected 116 pieces from the collection, all from Ottawa artists, all pieces from the collection that had either never been rented or very rarely been rented or sent out on loan or exhibit. And we made a donation to the City of Ottawa's Municipal Art Bank. So this is one way that we free up space in the art bank, but more importantly, that now it's all on exhibit in Ottawa for the next generation of Canadians to be able to enjoy. And that's the sweet spot, if we're able to de-accession our work, but ensure that it is seen by broader audiences. We're also partnering with multiple organizations across Canada. This is some images from a pop-up gallery in Montreal. This exhibit is actually currently happening, and it's in the context of a festival called Nuit Blanche, or White Night. And it meets our objectives for outreach because it gets the artwork out of the warehouse into the financial sector downtown Montreal. But it also helps us because through all of the people who are coming to visit the exhibit, there's also potential clients. And since this exhibit opened 3 weeks ago, we already have 4 new clients in the Montreal market. So being such a vast geography, knowing that we can't do that much business development with 11 employees in one center, when we do exhibits, we really focus on that dual mandate that I spoke to earlier. This is another partnership also in Montreal, one that I'm very proud of. We basically partnered with health services and community centers in the greater Montreal area and did a permanent installation. The gentleman that you see on the right is actually a homeless person who's coming into a health center where he can get access to nurses and to doctors and to be treated. And if you fundamentally believe that art heals, that art starts a conversation and engages people, then who better than someone who certainly needs all of the healing he can get. And it's just coincidence that he happened to be there. This was on the day that we installed the artwork, and he asked if he could come in, even though the CLSC or the health center was not yet open, and we allowed him to come in, and he allowed us to take his picture. So this is something that I'm really proud of, because the health system would not be able to afford art rental, especially not this particular one. And so it helps us connect with a different audience than the one we normally would, and speak to the more powerful role of the arts in greater society. This is probably, of all of our initiatives in the last year, the one I'm most proud of. Our Canadian soldiers, when they return from conflict zones, go into what we call decompression centers. There's 47 decompression centers in Canada, and it's essentially where they go and receive counseling, physical therapy. Many of them come back with injuries, and it's where they help to reintegrate them into society. We approached the Canadian National Forces with the idea of doing a test pilot of installing Artbank artwork in this military base, which serves as a decompression center. And initially they were a little bit hesitant. They weren't sure if it was appropriate given the activities that take place at the military base. I don't think that one naturally equates in Canada military and arts, but they warmed up to the idea, and when we went in with the recommendations, actually they accepted 100% of the recommendations that our staff had selected for them. What's really interesting, and one of the criteria, is that other than on the opening day, which this is our Canada Council CEO, Simon Brault on the right, we were allowed to take these pictures. We're not allowed to go and take pictures or film video with the soldiers to protect their privacy. But what I was able to do was to go and speak with some of the counselors who work with these soldiers, and some of the artwork was installed in the rooms where the soldiers receive therapy. And it was so interesting. I said earlier, we say art starts a conversation. The therapist said that it was so interesting to see that the soldiers, normally previously were looking to avoid contact and trying to find a spot in the room to focus on. Now they were focusing on this artwork, and it was a way to open up the conversation and to begin the healing process. So while this is a pilot project, we will be moving forward with more decompression centers in Canada, and my dream is to be able to do an installation in all 47 centers across the country. And again, the Canadian military would not be able to afford this type of installation. This one was funded in part through our parliamentary appropriation, but also by a generous donation from our then chair, Joe Rotman, who was chair of the board of the Canada Council. We also, like many of our counterparts around the world, use the Artbank as a way of fostering cultural diplomacy. On the upper left-hand corner, perhaps my colleague from the US will recognize this person. She's Vicki Heyman, the wife of the US ambassador to Canada. Vicki collaborates very closely with the Artbank, and that's two Vickies, by the way, because on the right is Victoria Henry, who was the director of the Artbank up until her retirement last summer. So these pictures were from a panel discussion that we held at the Artbank on September 9th on Why Painting Now? And this was organized in collaboration with the US Embassy and had about 85 participants in attendance. We also have artwork in embassies around the world, including about 30 pieces, I believe, at the Canadian Embassy in Washington. Whereas historically there was no public space to see the Artbank collection, when the Canada Council moved its headquarters from one location downtown Ottawa to another in 2013, I fought very hard to get a public space for the Artbank, and this is what you're looking at right now. We call it Ajagamo. It's an homage to the fact that Ottawa, Canada is on traditional Algonquin territory, and the word Ajagamo means crossroads in Algonquin, so very appropriate for an art gallery that is, at crossroads of all of the different cultural expressions. So this was one of our recent exhibits. We usually change the exhibits about every 3 months, and have started doing vernissages whenever we open a new exhibit, as well as leveraging all of our social media platforms to engage those people who can't actually make it physically to Ottawa for the vernissage. we're seeing that not only does this get the public to come to our headquarters and to engage with the Artbank collection, but again, it's good for business building. It's also good for media coverage. A lot of our events garner significant media coverage, and media coverage is never a bad thing. It gets the name out there. It helps us build new clients. By the way, the day before I hopped on the plane to get here, in the Ajagamo space, there was an event to launch a new public art competition for a new Stanley Cup memorial. So the Stanley Cup is the award that is given to the National Hockey League. Our favorite pastime in Canada is art. Our second favorite pastime is hockey. And it was interesting to see a whole bunch of hockey lovers come into the Ajagamo Gallery and participate in this event to launch the Stanley Cup competition. And it's something that we're trying to do more of, is to host events for organizations that aren't necessarily like-minded to try to connect with new audiences. The other thing that we've begun doing is opening up the Artbank to the general public right now once a year, because with 11 people and such a large space, you can imagine there's security issues and all sorts of challenges with opening it up. But this is in conjunction with a national event in Canada called Culture Days. And Culture Days strives to get all Canadians out there and experience cultural events. So we participate by opening up the Artbank and allowing Canadians to come in and pull the artwork, play with the artwork, do all sorts of things. But because our Artbank warehouse is in a very industrial neighborhood, it's very challenging to get people to come to such a distant, more remote area that doesn't have anything appealing other than a few car dealerships. So what we did is, the first year that we opened the Artbank as part of Culture Days, we had an art appraiser come in, and people could bring their own artwork from their home and have it appraised for free on the premises. Well, half an hour before we opened our doors, we had a lineup going all the way out the door. We had a lot of media coverage at that event as well, and a few treasures. Someone actually had an original Group of 7 painting, which is a very important collection in Canada. And she received it from her grandmother, who used to work in an art supply store. And a young up-and-coming artist didn't have the money to buy art supplies and gave her a painting of his in exchange for art supplies. That painting was appraised at 35,000 Canadian. So I think her grandmother would be happy with that exchange today. The most important way in which we reach more Canadians and more people worldwide is through the digitization of our collection. As I mentioned earlier, we're now very proud to say that all 17,000 artworks are available for viewing on artbank.ca. One of the things that you can do if you go and visit this website is you can create your own collection. And in fact, if you go, you'll see I've created my own collection. It's linked to a blog that's posted on the website. I think one of the reasons we wanted to do that is because a lot of people do want to be a curator for a day, so to speak, and do want to explore with, if they were in a position to be able to select artwork, what would it look like? But we know that realistically, not all Canadians can rent artwork, nor does our art rental program speak directly to Canadians, meaning you can't rent artwork and put it in your home. It's only for office spaces. And so this way, everyone, in fact, can create their own collection and share it with their network through digital platforms. It's kind of interesting because the digitization of the collection, not like our deaccession policy, was one that was met with a lot of challenges in terms of rights, and we initially thought it was going to be a bigger challenge than it was, but that's a whole other presentation for another day in terms of negotiating the right to be able to display all of the artwork. So 2017 is the 150th anniversary of Canada. It's also going to be the 60th anniversary of the Canada Council for the Arts and the 45th anniversary of its Artbank. And that's one of the reasons why I think we thought that digitizing the collection leading up to all of our celebratory and public engagement activities for 2017 really met with our vision for the future, which is making art accessible to all, and to help tell the story of all of the Canadian artists who are featured in the collection and what the artworks have meant to them. I do have time for question and answer, but if you'll permit me, I thought I would just do a little bit of a demonstration of the artbank.ca website. We do use the artbank.ca website as a business generating tool as well. So you can go in and do online chat with an art consultant. You can view featured collections that were created either by staff or by other people. Our new Minister for Canadian Heritage just selected 46 pieces, I think, for her office spaces, and we'll be launching a blog very shortly with her selection and why she spoke, why she picked those specific pieces. We also feature certain events. So recently we celebrated National Flag Day of Canada, and this is the Life Vest piece that I was speaking to earlier that used to be in my office, that's now in the Honorable Mélanie Joly's office. These are all examples of pieces in the collection that you can go online and find out more about. And one of the beauties of this is that even if artwork is on loan, on exhibit, or is rented to a client, everyone can still go and access it. This is also where we feature all of our blogs. The navigation on this computer is not conducive to me showing you this as well as I would have liked. This is artworks from the Art Souterrain exhibit in Montreal that I spoke to earlier, including this fabulous piece by French-Canadian artist Claude Tousignan. These are all pieces that are all currently installed in Montreal as part of this. So I don't think I'll spend much more time on this because I'm having a hard time navigating this computer. But I would like to just conclude by saying that we do view the Artbank as a national treasure, one that really speaks to the diversity of Canada and the importance of art in the lives of all Canadians, and I hope that we can continue to expand the Artbank's reach in the years to come. So, xie. And if you have any questions, we have a little bit of time left for questions. Yes.
我是来自台北，我目前有一个展览正在文联馆，我是圣安艺术奖的创办人。那么我们也有很多儿子的作品想捐出来，有没有办法捐给艺术银行？尤其是外国加拿大的，我儿子是在澳洲往生的，27岁，澳洲念博士的时候溺水往生，所以我为了这样成立一个圣安艺术奖。Okay.
Do you mind just starting over in the translation booth because I missed the beginning and I am afraid that I didn't catch that.
Okay, Mr. Young's son went to Australia study abroad many years ago, but when he studied PhD, he go to swimming and dead. And he found fine art awards for college and high school students. And he wanted to send list fine arts to all over the world to make some exhibition. So he wondered if he can donate his son's painting to your Canada bank, Artbank. Thank you.
First of all, that's a very generous offer and a very timely offer because we're in the midst of working on a policy specific to donations. We've actually never received donations into the collection. They've been purchased through a peer assessment process, and more recently, we're making the decisions based on recommendations by peers, but with final decisions made by the Canada Council Artbank employees. As we develop our policy for donations, it's certainly something that we would consider, and we can exchange contact information after my presentation so that we can see if this is a possibility. But thank you so much for this generous offer.
Sorry. It happened, the exhibition is in Taichung Wenyingguan, so we invited you to come to see it. Thank you. See his son's artworks. Thank you.
谢谢. Were there any other questions?
I'm supposed to make some comments first.
Okay.
And then we open the floor.
Okay.
Sounds good. So, okay, that was rehearsal. So, okay.
That's what happens when your speakers aren't at the rehearsal.
Yeah. No, sorry. Do you want to take a seat first? Yeah.
Do you want this mic or
don't. 好，我说刚才是这个彩排了啊，因为我们本来程序应该是跟大家做一些这个分享之后哦，然后我们才把这个问题开放给这个观众哦。那首先还是非常感谢这个文化部还有国立台湾美术馆给我这个机会回到我的娘家啊，真的26。谢谢。对，26年前，如果不是这个阴错阳差的一个机会到这个当时的省立美术馆服务啊，我大概绝对不会想到有一天可以在这个5个大洲服务，然后最后回到自己的家乡台湾啊。那但很可惜，这趟旅程非常长啊，到目前为止还是没有回到这个台中来服务啊。好，那针对刚才这个 Tammy 这个部分啊，那我有几个这个感想想要这个分享啊。那首先我觉得我非常感动，就是说这个加拿大的艺术银行啊，就是 Art Council， 面对从70年代以来到现在这40多年啊，坦白来讲，这个世纪已经翻了非常非常多个这个翻转啊，这样剧烈的这个变化。坦白来讲，也只有这个艺术人、创意人，还有这个因为受艺术文化启发的所有人，才有这个勇气啊，不断的去面对，不断的去超越啊。那所以我们面对他们这个40多年来的不断的这个反省和回想，那甚至去超越他们曾经一度停摆啊这些危机，我想的确可以学到非常的这个多哈。那有几个部分我特别觉得这个感动哈。那第一个就是他们的这个主张很重要啊，就是说这个艺术不是为了这个可以这个 afford 供养得起的人啊，艺术银行来服务啊，而是更重要的是对这个供养不起 not affordable。I'm really impressed, by the move to advocate the idea that our bank should not only serve those ones who can afford art pieces, but it's more important to serve all those ones who cannot afford, but make it accessible to all of them. Yeah. 我觉得这个基本的这个人道精神，就是我们在这个面对文化艺术议题最关键的部分。作为一个这个公民权里头的文化权的伸张，艺术银行就是一个非常重要的这个举措，尤其在台湾，所有的这个受教权啊，这个选举权啊，这个工作权啊，甚至性别平权、这个民族平权、这个公民权都被伸张了啊。那唯独在文化权上的这个争取和追求，其实还是很有一段距离。所以第二个感想就是在于这个基本的这个人道精神或是人文的这个诉求之下啊，那当然非常关键就是这个加拿大对这个原住民的这个议题充满了这个反省。那透过艺术银行最实际的这个作为来重新去这个检讨，然后认定，甚至这个寻求这个所有种种不只是 make peace 还可以这个协助各种民族之间做 reconcile The second point I would like to make is not only the healing powers but also how you get use of the Artbank acquisition to show your attitudes, to pay tributes based on the reflections on the misbehaviors of the former government or the so-called invaders towards the Aborigines. And I think, in search of the basic human rights, it's more than proper, it's a must for the Taiwanese government to learn from this. Being the most liberal place in Asia among all the Chinese territories, I think, Taiwanese government or Taiwanese people or society, should also get use of the Artbank such a system to find a way to reconcile with the past and with the all those ones who have been deprived or mistreated in the past. Of course, not only Aborigines, but also all those artists who have suffered but still pull through all the most difficult times for us. 最后一个这个部分，我觉得想要谈一谈，就是这个有很多新的举措不只是这个即便它是服务在这个公部门或者说是政府相关的这个主导的这个机构但是做得非常的优秀杰出，甚至我觉得非常 refreshing。那就是有关退伍军人，或者说还在服役中，但是这个因为战争或者服役过程当中受到伤害的这些这个军人那台湾在1950年代、60年代有一次的这个可以说是很精彩的革命，就是军中文艺运动当时当然带着这个某些这个政治的意图那对为失去大陆的这个反省，但是的确因为让在军中这个所谓的兵演兵、兵写兵、这个兵化兵就是鼓励这个艺文运动，那让台湾的这个在战后的这个艺术运动产生了一个很重要的质变，不管在现代诗剧场乃至于说这个艺术那所以又隔了半世纪了应该说超过60年一甲子那到底有没有可能我们又再度的从这次加拿大这个 Tammy Scott 的 presentation 里面得到了新的这个启发整个80年代、90年代乃至于20世纪的今天，有这么多的这个战争平人，所谓的这个大国基于人道主义，的确都出兵干预，或者是做这个救援的这个活动，可是付出的代价的确是很多很多宝贵的生命那我们如果没有办法 restore 他们的这个身体的这个健康，最少我们是不是可能透过类似像艺术银行去服务这些这个提供心理治疗、物理治疗、生理治疗的这些机构让这个更多 曾经为了这个捍卫人道捍卫这个人本思想而这个受创被 traumatized 的这个年轻或者是宝贵的这个生命体那以上就是我大概分3个部分跟大家针对这个加拿大的贵宾Tammy Scott 做的这个 presentation 做的回应那我现在这个就把最后的时间是不是交给这个现场的听众。嗨，对，麻烦一下。不好意思，因为我想他们是全程录音，所以我们尽量那个在。那要不要待会儿下一位听众可不可以先举一下手，我们把麦克风准备好这边好，等一下。好，来这位先生。
来，我姓潘，我想请教一下，Mr. Scott，或者是局长关于艺术银行 Artbank 的一些的作品出借之后损坏了，或者是没办法达到修复的程度，那这种争议怎么处理？
Thank you. So that's a good question. First of all, it's kind of surprising that we've only had, out of 17,000 pieces, about a handful of pieces that were damaged beyond our ability to repair the work. So we've been very lucky. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we will not rent artwork to anyone unless we have our own technicians come in and do the installation. And when they come in and do the installation, we give them judgment call to determine if an artwork is being installed in a place where there's a higher risk for it to be damaged. In particular, by the way, in our northern Indigenous artists, we have a lot of soapstone artwork, which is extremely fragile. And one would think perhaps not so feasible in terms of rental. When we rent it, we install it on a podium inside a glass case, which again dramatically reduces the chances of it being damaged. Within our small but mighty team of 11, we do have one person who does art restoration. And if something were damaged beyond his own capabilities, we would bring another professional come in to do the restoration. It's one of the things that we struggle with, by the way, in terms of renting the artwork to people to install in their homes. It's something that is asked of the Artbank on a regular basis, and we've determined that it's very difficult to control a lot of factors for artwork that's in homes. The same goes, I understand that some of the artwork here is in restaurants. We don't do art rental in restaurants because there's a higher risk of damage depending on where it's placed within the restaurant, but it's one of the sectors that we have not really explored or expanded with because of the risk, but something that I think we need to look at, and I'm very curious as to how that works here in Taiwan so that maybe we can learn from you and expand in that area. But overall, everything is installed by our technicians, really challenging again when you have to put them in a truck or on a flight for many hours to get them to do the installation. But that's just part of the agreement that we have with our clients, and it ensures that the artwork is protected.
Okay, thank you. 那下一位要不要先举一下手？好 ，OK。
Hello. Ms. Scott, thank you very much for sharing this wonderful experience with us today. I have two simple questions. The first one is that when you talk about the definition of Canadian art, I'm wondering what's the definition, because you show us the work of Canadian art, but from today's presentation, it looks more like it's all about modern and contemporary art practice. But what if about the traditional religious or indigenous art practice? What about their art? And is it one of the consideration of the Canadian art? And the second question is that when you show us the work of the truck, you talked about that it's never been rented and it's difficult to show. So you're thinking about selling it or just donate it. But I'm wondering, because there's so many different kind of presentation of art and practice, And if the work is important, and if the media is also important, and they're also one of the ways of showing ideas and concepts, is there a possible way to tell people or try to convince people to rent and show that kind of art? Because that's exactly the same situation in the art market. Collectors, they tend to buy the easy showing pieces instead of those tricky ones. Thank you.
So if you saw the recent acquisitions, in particular the ones that speak to indigenous themes, I would say that people probably wouldn't refer to them as easy pieces, that they challenge you, but they're just easier to install and to rent because of the dimensions, because of the type of artwork that it is. And I want to clarify one thing. When we decide that we're deaccessioning something from the collection, it's not at all a judgment call saying that that piece is not important or relevant. It's just that it's not in keeping with the current mandate of the Canada Council Artbank collection. And we wish that we had unlimited space and that we could keep everything, but in a way we can. By digitizing the collection and leaving it permanently on artbank.ca, it means that just because something is no longer kept in our warehouse, maybe in that case we're looking to donate that piece back to the artist who created it a few decades ago, it would still continue to live on through our digital platforms. On to your first question, yes, the Canada Council Artbank is focused on Canadian contemporary art. The Canada Council's mandate overall is much broader, and it extends beyond the visual arts to all artistic disciplines. Again, with the Artbank, it's something, Canadian contemporary art is something that we can share with people in a way and build a private collection in a way that we can't do so easily with dance or with music or with other artistic disciplines, but we do fund those through different programs than the Artbank program.
那我也这个附带回应第一个问题哈，因为有很多 artifacts 涉及它宗教的禁忌哈，或者说是在跟其他这个部分，其实我们尽量其实也不是说要避免啊，因为有更多的这个concern，所以一般来讲我们在国际上处理的确是会比较谨慎啊，再加上说这个有的部分甚至涉及到恐怕还会涉及在法规上的这个问题哈，所以这个是可能超越各位的想象，所以 contemporary art 在很多的这个部分它可以更直接更立即的去回应这一切哈。那因为时间关系，就最后一个问题，而且只有一个哈。那我也在这里先提醒这个未来几场的这个参与的这个听众们哈，那就是这个麻烦这个尽量维持这个秩序，然后问问题尽量就一个哈，让这个问题时间可以更开放。好，麻烦最后一个问题，好，谢谢。
我一个简单的问题，主要是针对就是说加拿大艺术银行哈，它出售它的这个艺术品的这个是不是有一些法律的规定，或者是说它只能够透过契约的方式？那大概就是这个简单问题，谢谢。
Well, there's several laws, in particular laws of accounting, but as it relates to the artist's rights, it's more a contract with the artist, and that's what we're building into our current acquisitions. So we have clauses that stipulate when, why, and how we might deaccession artwork. Because some of the artwork that we're deaccessioning right now was from before we had those clauses built in. As I said, our first attempt is to always consult directly with the artist or the family of the artist if the artist is deceased, to offer them a chance to get it and to have a say in what the deaccession process might be. Beyond that, there's nothing within Canadian law that prohibits us from selling artwork. We are very conscious, though, that the early acquisitions were made out of public funds. And therefore, we feel very strongly that 100% of the proceeds from the sale of artwork needs to go directly into acquisition of new artworks and not go to any other part of the Artbank program. So that's the only way in which we would use that money, is to acquire new artwork and support new up-and-coming artists.
好，那我最后一个 comment 是这样子因为他
讲得非常有趣。I'm so curious about one of your comments, as the end to end this session. That's you are telling us your story. You are running out of storage room, but Canada is so vast. So I just wondering if there's any alternative program for you to, build up more storages. If not, welcome to send them to Taiwan.
We'll keep that in mind. That'll go into our de-accession program.
Yeah, because we are always so cramped OK, thank you 谢谢大家。那就接下来就是这个午餐的时间，就麻烦大家准时回到现场谢谢。
我们谢谢 Scott 处长以及我们的谢局长，特别感谢谢局长为我们主持刚刚的论坛。那我们早上的活动在这里告一段落。那我们现在是午餐时间，那也请各位请讲师来宾们都稍作休息。下午是1点半开场，那还请如果有任何问题可以洽工作人员。那请1点半准时回到现场，谢谢各位。
I don't take that to lunch, right? No. Okay. Bring it back to